Hi there, it's Jeanette, and welcome to my final video for my Christmas series in 2017. This is day 8. For this video, I took a stamp set from Mama Elephant, and with it I created 3 different projects. So I created a Christmas card, which you can see on the left, a December daily insert, which is in the middle, and a Christmas ornament. So here's the insert from December daily, so you can see how I just placed all the figures on it. Here's the Christmas card. I added some glitter cardstock to it, and here's the ornament, and it's two-sided, so if it is hanging in the Christmas tree, no matter which way you see it, there'll be something pretty to look at. So to get started, what I did was that I took some Neenah cardstock, put that into my MISTI tool, and I lined up the stamps where I wanted them to be, and then I just inked them up and press down to stamp them. Now I did have to do this 2 times to get a really nice impression, and then I just took that piece of paper, flipped it upside down, and making sure that the magnet wasn't going to be in the way, I just repeated the process and re-inked it and stamped it 2 times. Once that was done, I did take another piece of Neenah cardstock and do the exact same thing. So in total I did stamp everything 4 times. For the Copic coloration, I'm listing the Copic markers that I used here on the screen as I use them. And I'm coloring up the polar bears in some nice warm gray tones. These little bears were super fast to color because really you're only coloring around the edges of the bears. You're leaving the middle part uncolored. And so after I had used my first 2 markers, I decided that I did need a little bit more definition, so I brought in my W3 and just added it very sparingly to the areas where I wanted a little bit more depth. Once that was done, I took my W1 and I blended it out to get rid of any harsh lines. And then I did the same thing with my W00, and you can see I'm not venturing too far into the middle portion of the bear. After this step, I did go in with my colorless blender just to even out the middle portion a little bit more, and then I went in with the colors for my cheeks and my ear. So you can see with the cheek there, I just sort of buffed it out a little bit with the colorless blender, and then I used those 2 colors for the ear. I'm going to move on to the scarf now. I decided to make his scarf a really bright Christmas red. So I was being really careful with these markers. Red really tends to bleed, and because it was a smaller area, I really wanted to make sure I didn't oversaturate my paper. I added a few dots in the pom-poms there with C1, and then I moved to the little baby bear. So I'm just doing him with a couple of colors here. I don't want him to be as dark as the Papa Bear. Just making sure everything is nicely blended out. I'm going to move on to the Mama Bear. Use the same colors for her as I did for the Papa Bear. And I'm just showing you the coloration so you know where to put your shading. I know that you guys appreciate seeing where I place everything, but you can see it's done in pretty much the exact same way as I did the other bear. Now I won't be showing you the coloration for like all the bears because they're going to be exactly the same. Once I had colored the first set of bears, I went on and colored the rest of them in the exact same way, and you'll find if you are coloring a bunch of duplicate images, you're going to see that you're going to get faster and faster as you go along because you really know what you're doing and you remember where everything is supposed to be placed. Just going in with the ears right now. For her scarf, I decided to make that a nice sort of aqua blue color. And I only used 2 colors of markers for this just to make sure there was no bleeding. These images are so cute, and I love that you can build so many cute little scenes using them. I'm going to work now on the Christmas tree. So what I did was I sort of colored the entire tree with a very light green color. Then while I was waiting for that to dry, I colored in the tree trunk. Then I went back into the tree and just used sort of some strokes, like flicking motion downwards to sort of mimic the pine needles. Did that with a slightly darker marker. Then I'm going to let that dry again while I color some of the ornaments. Again, I'm just going to use 2 colors here because I don't want any bleeding. Then I'll go right back in and use the next darkest color for the tree. Again, just sort of drawing in the pine needles. I'm going to let that dry, and I will color in another set of ornaments. So this way, when you're coloring the tree, the little flicks that you draw on won't sort of blend away because the paper has had time to dry. Here's the darker color that I'm using, and you can see that the tree is starting to look a little bit more like a real tree. And then I'll just very gently blend away anything that was a little too harsh with one of the lighter colors. I'm going to go in and color the ornaments in a different shade of green. And then I will color in the stars on the tree and the star that the little baby bear is holding. I'm going to add a little bit more depth of color there with a darker marker. Then we're going to move on to the packages, the little presents. I'm using the same markers that I'm using for like the scarf color is exactly the same. The reds are the exact same markers. I didn't use a whole lot of markers in this coloration. Kind of stuck to the same ones so that it has a really nice uniform look. I did sort of pick the tones from the pattern paper that I used for my December daily insert. You're going to see that in a little bit. So the color tones were all picked from that paper. I matched that paper so that it would look really nice together. So I'm just going to darken up the nose and the eyes here. I forgot to color in that ornament, just using the same colors of red that I used for everything else. Now I have the metal dies, and I'm going to just really carefully line them up on top of the image. I'm going to hold those dies down with some post-it tape. You can use washi tape if you don't have post-it tape. And this just makes sure that as I'm running it through my big shot, they're not going to shift around. So after I ran it through the big shot, I removed the images. I kept the dies out, and I'm going to show you this sort of neat little trick that I'm going to do. Because I used my MISTI to stamp everything, the other images that are stamped are in the exact same position. So I'm going to take my dies, line them up here in the negative from the first set that I cut, and then I'm going to use some Glad cling wrap and put that over top of the dies. This is something that I saw Jennifer McGuire do a long time ago. So then I'm just able to pull the cling wrap off and then position it over my next set of images that need to be cut. And you're going to see that they cut perfectly. And I didn't have to take them all off and realign them, and I can do it for the next set of images as well. So this just sort of makes it a lot easier if you're doing a lot of duplicate stamping and cutting. So this is just some pattern paper from Simple Stories. It's been a few years I've had it, and I just sort of cut it out to measure 4 by 6. I'm going to be putting this in my December daily album, and you can see how I chose all the colors to color with for my Copic Marker coloring. I chose them from this paper. I'm just going to position everything in place. I did have like 2 pieces of paper there, so I'm going to make sure that when they're put together they're going to line up exactly. And I used some zig glue for the images, and I used some adhesive tape for the paper. And I just created this cute little scene with the family. I'm just going to adhere the presents, and that is all done. So we're going to move on now to the Christmas card. Oh, we're not going to move to the Christmas card. We're going to move to adding some twine. So I did decide that it was a little bit too bare, so I was able to pull the paper up a little bit and just added some baker's twine. It's sort of a cream colored twine with some silver running through it, and it wasn't too heavy or too much or too dramatic, but it was just the added touch that I needed to make it look a little extra special. So now we're going to move on to the card and to the ornament. I guess I did the ornament first. So what I did is I took the little piece of paper that was inside the ornament. I found a Spellbinder's die that was the exact same circumference of that paper, and I die cut some glitter cardstock. So I cut the cardstock 2 times so that I will have a front and back for the ornament. And then I used some score pal tape just to make sure that it stayed adhered really firmly. I did go ahead and color up another little image because I realized they weren't all going to fit the way I thought they were going to. So I did color up that other image. It's from the same stamp set, and I used basically the same colors as I did for the other ones. And I just added score pal tape to these. Because it's glitter cardstock, I want to make sure that these really stay stuck onto the paper and they don't come off. So this will be one side of the ornament. I'm just going to trim off the excess, and then I'm going to add score pal tape to the other ones and create the other little scene. Then I added some glitter to the ornament and then some glue to the edges. Pop in the insert there, add a little bit more glue, and then close it up. And you can see that now I have a snowy scene on both sides. And I did tie a little extra ribbon onto the ornament there, some black and white gingham. I thought it looked really pretty. So now we're going to move on to the card. So using the same glitter cardstock, I cut it to be the same width as the card, and then I'm just here sort of estimating exactly where I want to cut it. And I'm just using a landscape die from Mama Elephant and just creating this sort of glitter top to the card. For the bottom, I decided to lightly sponge some Distress ink. This is Tumbled Glass, and concentrating the color on the bottom and working my way up so that it fades almost to nothing. I think this is a really clean look for a card, and it was enough that the card didn't look too stark, but it didn't really take away from the scene in any way. So do it gently, do it gradually, and you'll have a really nice blend. So then I was getting an idea of how that was all going to look there. I thought I was going to put some ribbon on the top, but I decided the twine that I had used for the December Daily insert was actually nicer, so I'm just wrapping it around twice and tying it in a bow. And I will use some score pal tape later on to adhere that. I'll get all these little elements glued down. So I'm using my Zig glue pen and my little tweezers to make sure everything is adhered exactly where I want it to be. Add my little presents here. And they just sort of fill in any of the empty spaces. I'll put a block on that so that it dries nicely, and now I'm just going to adhere everything down with my score pal tape. And this is extra strong, and I know nothing will fall off if I use it. The last thing I wanted to do was to add a sentiment, so I probably should have done this before I adhered the top part of the card, but no worries. I took my MISTI and I used that to make sure that it was going to stamp exactly where I wanted it. I did have to be a little bit careful with the little twine there. It kept falling down and I didn't want it to get caught in the ink, so I did end up, you'll see in a minute, you'll see that I sort of pushed it up with some post-it tape to make sure it didn't get in the way. And that's it. My card is now done, and I finished 3 projects using 1 stamp set. I added a little bit of shimmers there, and then I have everything completed and done. I hope this inspires you to try doing this. with your stamp sets. It helps stretch your stamps if you use them in different ways. I thank you so much if you've been watching my series from the beginning for this year. Thank you so much for supporting me, for your comments. I wish you and your family a very, very Merry Christmas, and I will be seeing you in the new year. The full list of supplies and links can be found below this video on YouTube or on my blog. Thanks for watching.